Hi there from the GJ Studios. So we are going to do a video this week on the new Imperial Tone King pedal, which has been out for some while now. I saw it at the NAMM show earlier on this year. I decided to get one the minute I saw them being advertised. I've been using the Tone King Imperial Amp, which has just been a fantastic amp. I used that for about a year, and I decided to get one of these pedals because I had two reasons for getting it. One, I wanted to use it into an existing amplifier, so you had the kind of characteristics of the Imperial amp in another amp, which I tried, which was a kind of failed experiment. And then I also wanted to use it because I kind of wanted to try it out live, so I didn't have to bother taking an amp. So I was going to try that experiment, which did work out quite well. So let's get into it. So how I'm running this today, which is important for you guys to understand how you're hearing the sound. So I've got a digital out going into my Behringer desk, which talks to my Mac going through my Yamaha speakers. And then I've actually got my guitar plugged into a tuner, and the tuner plugs into it. It's similar like you would with a pedal board or an amplifier. I'm actually running it out stereo because I quite like the mix of that in the studio. I probably wouldn't do that live, but I quite like it in here. So, and I've done that with two XLRs. This pedal has got loads of fantastic capabilities in terms of how you can run it out of the back. It's got loads of different configurations, so it's pretty good. So you can use it in that vein. So let's just talk about the pedal. So the important thing to get when you set a pedal up is the gain stage of it. So you can hear it's very clean. Okay, so what I've got is my attenuation is all the way off, and the volume of the pedal is up quite a bit. So then I could adjust my volume and my speaker, but I've got the pedal set up pretty clean. So with this pedal, you can switch between two channels on it. So it's got two characteristics. This is the first channel is really the sound of like a blackface Fender amplifier, and then the second channel is like a tweed, so it'll compress up more and it'll sound a bit fatter, a bit like a 50s amp. So you've basically got simple controls on it. You've got the attenuation, you've got bass, treble, volume, and then you've got this little cab IR switch, which switches between various cab simulations, and then you've got your reverb control here. So I've set my reverb up so it's kind of that spongy kind of laid in Fender sound you can get. So they've started doing this on amplifiers quite a lot now. So the dwell is the amount of the effect and the reverb is the effect. So if I just then turn that off, it's dry, there's no reverb, you can't hear any. Now I'll put it back to where it roughly was. And then this would make it more or less, so there's loads of it, and then none of it. So I tend to have it usually about there. The reverb is fantastic. It's like this big holy reverb. You can really dial in whatever you want with that. It does it exceedingly well. And then how you can set the channel up, which is a good thing, you can wind back the attenuation, so you can put more attenuation onto the channel and turn the level up, and it will distort. So that is quite a good feature to have, depending on how you might want to have it set. So you could have it so it clips, so you could turn the attenuation up more, pull the volume back, and you could even do it off the volume of the guitar, so you can hear. Full. So it's pretty good in terms of that. Probably back that up to about there. Turn your attenuation off. You can hear the amps nice and clean. So let's switch into the other channel. So if I now switch into the channel, so I'll click that button, you can now see that the reverb's actually gone off. So you actually need to assign the reverb to it by holding that down, and it will assign it to that channel. And then with this channel, you've got slightly different controls. So you've got your attenuator, you've got your cab sim, the same as the other one. Then you've got a mid bite, a tone and a volume. So the mid byte is kind of giving you different just kind of drive settings, and then the tone is obviously bass and treble and middle mixed in one knob depending on what you want, which is quite nice because you don't end up with a load of options that you never know what to turn. So if I just set the tone at 12 o'clock, you can hear my sounds quite distorted, and then if I wind the attenuation all the way up and pull the gain volume down on the channel, it'll clean it up, and you can kind of hear in that it'll mud your sound up quite a lot, which was what a tweed amp will do. Press it, and I could turn the tone up more. You put a lot of treble in it, I can wind it all the way off. It's a bit nothingy, 12 o'clock-ish. And you can kind of dial that into whatever settings you want to do. And then the mid byte, you can hear, now it's very clean. Put a bit of that in. It's distorting it. Okay, so that's as simple as that works. Now, this pedal actually has got an interesting feature they put into it where you can bypass it altogether. If you double click it, you'll see now that light's flashing on it. Now, when that flashes, that means the pedal is now discontinued. It's basically straight in. So there's no amp modulation, there's nothing happening with the pedal at all. That's just straight in as you hear the guitar running through the gear. And then turn it back off. So I used that live, so if I wanted to go back to the amp I was in, I actually double clicked it and it did that. So it's 2 clicks. Which seems to be having a slight, there you go. And it will do that, okay? Which is quite cool. You've got this button here which will switch between your channels. Now, one thing that's really important when you're setting something up is to balance your channels. You don't want to hear stomping on a pedal and your gain goes ridiculous. So you can hear my volume isn't changing, it's just changing the sound of it. And I tend to set up any kind of distortion or drive, so it's just subtly doing it rather than it's like not chalk and cheese. You don't want to hear two sounds that are completely different. And the other thing you can do is roll the volume back on your guitar a bit if you want to clean it up, which I've now done. And you can hear by pulling your volume in, it'll just drive it a bit more. The tremolo feature, which you get in a lot of Fender amps, is really good on this amp. So let's try it in. You can alter the speed of that, so you can have it or super slow. Depths. Now that is something that you can really hear all of a sudden now. Where I've run it stereo, you can hear it panning between the speakers, which is really weird if you're in the room, but it's quite a cool feature. You can change the speed. You can nearly make it sound a little bit vibey. Okay, and if I now try that in the clean channel, I can go back to my clean channel and then I can turn my tremolo back on. Speed back down. And you can set it pretty much however you want it. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to the other bit of the software. So what you can also do, which you can't do obviously live unless you take a computer with you, is you can actually use this software which opens up some pretty cool features within the pedal. So you can, obviously on here you could bypass it if you chose to, so that will turn it off. So that was the same as clicking on the button. Okay, back on. You can change the channel, you can turn the reverb on and off, tremolo on and off. You can do a loop bypass and you can do an IR bypass. Now, the IRs are the interesting thing with these things, where they basically fire a frequency through a speaker which measures it from nothing to something that we can't even hear. So you map the frequency of the speaker. Now what they've done with this, they've obviously tried loads of different speakers and they've mapped tons of speakers. So you've got options which you can only kind of see in this software. So if we look for the rhythm channel at the moment, if I click this plus button, it tells me what speaker I've got in this. So this is a 1967 Fender Deluxe Reverb 1x12 combo, so it's captured that speaker. And then I can actually click through different ones. So this is a Tone King one and another Tone King one. And then they've used different mics to capture those. So it's quite good in terms of the bits they've stored. And then it does the same in the lead channel. So you can click into the lead channel and you can also have different IRs in that one. This is worth mentioning. On this, they put this on their amplifiers. It's a high pass frequency filter. So basically it'll just kind of clip out the mids and make the amp sound a lot better. I've used it live. It does put the sparkle back in the amp if you are going to, you know, attenuate it and do that. And that's the big thing with Tone Kings. They're really hot on their attenuators. So that's kind of how that works. You can load in different IRs. It does give you that as an option. And it also gives you a MIDI out. I don't use that at all. Some people do. I've seen it used. The only thing that's slightly annoying about this software is you can't actually change the controls on it. So you can't turn the knobs. You have to do that on the pedal. But apart from that, it's absolutely fantastic. I've used it quite a few times live. It's a really robust pedal. You know, it will take some stick. It is very similar to the amp. It's a pretty good option. I know these days a lot of guitarists are trying to go away from using amps live because of the hassle they can kind of bring. The big thing that I always see with these pedals, and this is something that's worth, and I've done a few dep jobs lately where I've been in different sort of circles of things with different kind of guitar players, and I did one gig the other week where a guy had a valve amp and it was really distorted and his channels didn't sound very good. I did another one and I spoke to a guy and he said, I've gone away from using amps and I just use these, but trying to get the levels of it right is a bit of a nightmare. I think with these things, you've got to, if you want to just go straight in the PA direct, you've got to really trust your sound man. And also you've got to play with a good enough band where they're good with volume discipline. So, you know, nothing much changes during the gig. One of the downsides is that if you did go in the PA, unless you've got decent monitoring on your ears, you're not going to hear it. So other members of the band might struggle if they don't want to buy into that sort of idea. So the pros of this pedal, it's compact, it's small, it's very portable. Obviously stage-wise doesn't take up any room. It's robust, it's going to take a bit of stick, and it does copy the amp pretty well. I think it's really good. It's fantastic in the studio. I've used it loads of times as a great clean amp. You can run effects into it, it'll do that. So that's a real positive thing out of the pedal. Tone-wise, it's a really good copy of the amplifier without the hassle of taking an amp. Obviously, like I said before, if you use it live, you've got to rely on your sound man a bit more. Might be not necessarily what you're after, but it does do it very well. I've used it live. It's pretty good. So let's just have a bit of a listen to some of the tones out of it. Well, I'm old school. I prefer valve amps. I'm just going to put that out there. When I play for a valve amp, it just inspires me and I just want to play. I tend to find digital sort of sucks that out of me. I think it's because I'm old school and it's just what I like. So I think there's always plausible argument for both kinds of things in both kinds of settings. I know I spoke to a session player friend of mine the other day, and he's actually going out on tour, and he's actually not even going to take an amp with him. He's going to do it all digitally. So it's all horses for courses. Personally, I always want to use an amp. I do understand that sometimes these things break. It has happened to me on gigs. It's a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. So the Imperial 2, what a fantastic amp. It's obviously a take on a Fender amp. It's got 2 amps in it. So it's got the black face and the tweed, which is what the digital pedal was representing too. So the digital representation is of this amplifier that they probably made first. Let's just have a quick talk about it. So one instrument in, okay, it's got no effects loop on it. So if you do want to run effects and you do use, you know, a lot of modulation in your sound, you've got to put it in the front, which does take a bit of balancing. Hence why I don't use it anymore. I've moved over to my other amp. The one thing I really like about this amp is the simplicity of the controls on it. You've just got a basic function of volume, treble and bass. Reverb, you've got a tremolo, which is quite a nice feature to have in it. And then you've got the lead channel. Now the lead channel is just worth a quick mention and talk about, because that's actually a blueprint of a tweed amplifier. So it's not actually a, you know, a representation of this channel just with some drive or distortion. It's actually a whole different amplifier altogether. So how I tend to set the amp up, so I've got no attenuation on this. I tend to find sometimes the attenuation sucks the soul out of it a little bit. There is a high pass filter on the back, which is an HF switch, which you can obviously flick up or flick off depending on how you want to use it. If you flick it up, it'll put the highs and the mids back in the amp, so depending on how you're running it. Obviously, the hotter you run it, i.e. in terms of its volume, you know, you tend to have to back things off anyway because the amp's working a bit harder. So let's just hear a little bit of that. So how I tend to set my amp, I tend to like to hit the low note in the amp. So if I just turn that up. And about 5 on volume 2 is, I mean, I tend to gig on about 2 these days. It's mic'd through the PA. And about 5 is when I hear the bass coming into the amp. That's when I like to set that. It's quite a good way of setting your control up. The treble is a personal thing. I don't hit the strings very hard unless I really want to. So I tend to have my treble up quite a lot in the amp, which gives me a lot of presence, and it will make it cut better. So if I just wind it off. So you find you need to treble up a bit in it. So the reverb, okay, is basically on or off. So you can switch that. You can't actually turn it off with a foot switch, which I'll show you in a minute. So basically off, nothing. All the way on. Oh, echoes like a echoey chamber. And then I usually have it on about 2. So it's slightly spongy. You can lay into it, but it doesn't take over my front sound. Okay. Now, I always set the foot pedal up because it's much easier to control the amp than flicking these switches, which you can do, but it's much easier. So let's just flick on to the gain channel. So the lead channel is a tweed amp, okay, which is the same as on the Imperial pedal that we demoed earlier. So tone, obviously mixing in your bass and your treble and your mid. On about 4 maybe. It's better. And then the volume, obviously louder, quieter. And then obviously the mid bite, which is going to make it more gainy. So put a bit more gain in it if you want that sort of thing. Oh, that's really good. I can't tell you how tweedy that really does sound. That's remarkably good. That sounds exactly like a tweed amp. The other thing that's really nice about that, it gives you that real boxy kind of champ feel. That would be fantastic for recording. I think Clapton used that kind of tone on a couple of his songs on Ocean Boulevard. Perhaps a clean channel. So you can hear when the way I tend to play, I always set the channels up so the volume is balanced. So if I've got that, you can hear the volume is the same. It doesn't take your head off when you go onto the second channel, which is a good thing to do live. Let's give the tremolo a quick fiddle. So on the clean channel, tremolo. I'll just mention this about tremolos. You get this in valve amps. The only amp that's never done it was when I used my Koch amp, which he has its own circuit in it with its own tremolo. Everything's valve driven independently in a Koch amp. This, when you use the tremolo on this, you can hear the level dropping, which is a bit annoying. On gigs, I have had that, where if you engage the tremolo, you can hear the tone of the amplifier and the volume of it dropping a bit because you've engaged it. Ooh. That is a fantastic amplifier. Cool. So let's now go to the back of the amp. So just talking about the controls on the back, basically what you've got is their Tone King attenuator switch, which you had on the front of the pedal on the other one, so it's a bit easy to use. This is more, you want to set it and leave it. And what you can do with this is you can actually either attenuate the entire amplifier, so you can set your controls, and then if someone goes on and goes, oh, it's a bit loud, turn it down, you can actually turn the attenuator down and it will turn the amp down. How a lot of people tend to use this amp is they set it so you can attenuate just one channel, so you could attenuate the lead channel and not, so you can still have your nice clean channel, and then the gain, the leady channel, you can attenuate that so it can be a bit more driven. I'm just going to show you how it works on the rhythm channel because it does give you a really good sound. So at the moment, and if I click it back, you can hear it's notching it down. If I turn the volume up on the rhythm channel, you can hear it blast it up or farts it up a tree. Then wind the volume back on the front. It's got that high pass filter in that I mentioned, which is quite good. If you flick that in, it'll put the top back up in your amp. As you can hear, it's done now. Turn it off, turns it back down. This is an absolute fantastic amp. I really like this amp. It's just great. I've gigged it for about a year. Pros and cons. The other one is smaller, a bit more compact and bijou on a gig. That's quite a handy feature. If you just go in the PA with no monitoring or anything like that, you've got to rely on your in-ears for your own monitoring, and you've got to rely on the sound man to be doing what he needs to do out the front on it. It's quite a good thing. It's unlikely to break, so it's very good. You could use it on a board. You could use, like I said, a monitor wedge on the floor or something like that, or Fender do some FR fully ranged speaker cabs. You could use one of those with it. I have done that. It's really good for that. If you want the real McCoy, you've got obviously an amplifier. Valves does have the disappointment. Sometimes they do break. You know, you do have to look after them. Obviously, with this head, you could use it with a different cab. You don't want to use a Tone King one, as long as it's it's got to be 16 ohm cab. That's how this works. This amp is 20 watts. It's very good for gigs. I have used it on huge, jobs where we've been on massive stages and it's been mic'd. I've used it in pubs where it's been mic'd, so it's a very, very good amp for those things. You can run it up quite hot. You know, it's got clean, it's got a tweed channel on it, which does sound fantastic. Downsides to it, you can't put any effects. It's got no effects loop, so if that's a thing for you, it is a bit for me. It's not so good for that. What more can you say? This is a few Pressaroonies. I think this one's probably around 3,000-ish sort of pounds, something like that. But, you know, high-end boutique amp. The pedal, that's about 600 odd, so it's a good other option for you. They're both very good in your studio or at home. You know, this one is at a good level. You can use it, it's very usable, as is the other pedal. You know, the other pedal, you could use headphones with it. So both really good bits of kit. Okay, so other amps are out there that do similar things. I went for the Tone King brand because I really like the ethos of the company. I really like the products. I did speak to them quite a lot on email before I delved in. You know, I have to buy all this a lot of this equipment myself with my hard-earned Pressaroony cash. So, you know, I have invested my own money in this stuff to work out what I want, and it's given me a direction. We're going to do some videos later on some other modelling stuff like Helix and stuff like that. So there are many other brands out there that do similar things. I would say out of all the high-end amps that I've used, and I've now switched over to Amplifier Nation amps, which are just unbelievably good. They're just fantastic. This certainly is up there with the Tone, with those kind of amplifiers. It's definitely a notch on from a Fender amp for me, in terms of its build quality and the way it works. Touch wood, on a gig, this has never let me down. It has always worked. And it's been all over the place for a year, touring with me, so there you go.